happy you've all made it. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening tonight to come and talk with us about quitting weed and nicotine. My name is Lon Margosis. I am the Senior Product Associate at X Program, which means I do a lot of translating scientific literature into um, real a real digital tool that works for people. I am super thrilled to have with me Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher from the Stanford Reach Lab. She's an expert in quitting nicotine and quitting marijuana. I am going to be using the terms nicotine and marijuana. I'm sorry, weed and marijuana interchangeably. And I'm also thrilled to have with us today G. Marty, who's a member of the X community, who quit vaping with X program and who has several years of sobriety from marijuana under their belt. So thank you so much for being here. Dr. Bonnie, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your research?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. Either good afternoon or good evening or another time zone, depending on where you're calling from. I am Bonnie Halpern-Felsher. I'm a professor of pediatrics in the Division of Adolescent Medicine at Stanford University. I'm a developmental psychologist and did more studies in adolescent young adult health. My lab, which we call the Reach Lab, really looks at adolescent and young adult substance use, including cannabis and nicotine/tobacco. Look at what young people are using, why they're using, and how can we help young people quit. And so we've translated the research that my lab and others have done across the globe into our really very popular internationally and nationally used curriculums, our tobacco prevention curriculum, You and Me Together Vape Free, our Smart Talk cannabis prevention curriculum, and then our Healthy Futures, which is our alternative suspension and cessation program. And I'll tell you a little more about what we've learned from those as we get started. But we do a lot of work translating science into evidence-based curriculums. Thank you. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Dr. Bonnie. G, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with weed and with vaping?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm G. I have been weed free since coming up on 5 years, August 25th, 2020, as well as alcohol. That's just my story. And I have also quit vaping 2 years ago. And then I have been this past year slowly quitting cigarettes as well. And I don't know. I'm just, a person about town. I work in childcare. I'm a student. Just had my birthday, but it's been really helpful to use the X program. That's been part of my journey. And I just am really grateful to be here because quitting nicotine and weed made a huge difference in my life. So I'm really excited for this conversation and glad you all are here.
Thanks, G, and congratulations on almost 5 years. That is a huge accomplishment. So first question, how does using nicotine and weed together affect the body and the brain, and how does it affect quitting?
So I could start with that, and then G can chime in based on personal experiences, which I think will be very, very valuable. But I would say the biggest thing is, and depends on your age, but if you're under around mid-20s, your brain continues to develop till about 25. Anything that we put into our brains, smoke, vape, use through the oral process or whatever, can be highly addictive, especially until about age 25. So when we use THC, which is the psychoactive component of cannabis, or nicotine, which is the addictive properties within any tobacco or nicotine product, by themselves, we're so much more likely to become addicted. We use them together, we're even more likely. We're changing our brain. We're increasing the dopamine receptors. We're changing the brain to really want that buzz, to want that high, to want that feeling, and to want more and more of it. And if we don't, then really our body doesn't feel very good. And that has a lot to do with the brain process and addiction. So using cannabis and nicotine just enhances that process, enhances the ability of feeling addicted and being addicted. But we also know that it can also be additive in our heart and our lungs. And we know that when you're using both products together, it's not, 1 + 1 = 2. We don't know exactly, is it doubling, is it tripling, is it 1.5? But there's enough evidence now to show that using both products together. And by the way, when we say together, we could mean in the form of blunts, which has both together, but we could also mean just or a vape product that you put some nicotine, some THC. It could also mean that you just are using both products, maybe in the same day or the same week or same month. But most studies are now showing that using both products really increases the heart and the lung effects as well. I don't know, Chi, if you want to add anything to that based on
Yeah,
feeling.
totally. I can jump in. Yeah, I used primarily weed for since I was like 18, about 10 years, or it's been about for about 5 years really heavily. And then once I had quit using weed daily, very frequently, nicotine kind of entered the picture, and I had experience quitting one, but nicotine was different for me, and there are more places I could smoke, vape, cigarettes, and the process of withdrawal was different for me, and so it was something that I thought I was more prepared for. And then I was able to use a lot of tools from quitting marijuana, but I needed to like shift a few things. And I'm happy to get into like some specific skills later. But I don't have as much experience with using the both together all the time, but I do. There's similarities and differences. I'm sure people know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more from both of you about what quitting both weed and nicotine is like, whether it's at the same time or one and then the other. What kinds of withdrawal symptoms should someone be expecting? And what benefits of quitting are there? When can someone uh, expect to start feeling those benefits too?
Do you want to go first, G, with your experiences, and I'll fill in with what the science says, which is not always the same as what humans feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually went, um, I was quitting marijuana cold turkey, which was maybe not what everyone does. It's what I did. And I had pretty intense post acute withdrawal syndrome. I had some symptoms, intense emotions, sweating a lot. It's kind of gross. So, cyclical vomiting was happening for me. I think a lot of it was an emotional response. My nervous system was like really kind of overloaded without being numbed by the drug most of the time. And that lasted a long time before, it kind of felt like it was out of my system. I was being drug tested at the time, so I know it took about 100 days before the levels were kind of like normal. And then with nicotine, the process, and that's been almost 5 years now, but the process with nicotine was a lot more starting and stopping, and it was harder to quit cold turkey for me. Vaping, I tried to quit cold turkey, and then I needed some support, which is totally normal. I used nicotine gum. I used the X program, and I would get texts asking me how I was doing. I had to tell a lot of friends and ask for social support of like, hey, please don't offer me vapes. Would I beg sometimes, even though I had said that? Yes. I would beg for cigarettes or vapes, and because it's hard to quit. But it was doable. Sorry, you can hear my cat is crinkling on a paper bag in the background. He wanted to be a part of this. But I found that the emotional part for me of like replacing the behavior of smoking weed or nicotine with like emotional resilience and like emotional regulation was kind of a longer term, more longer term solution and longer term like learning curve. I hope I answered the question.
Thanks, G. Yeah, there's actually a question in the chat. How long did it take before you started feeling normal again after quitting weed and after quitting nicotine?
Yeah. So I mean, I just want to say like this is just one person's experience. So if it doesn't hit for you like the sorry, if it doesn't stand for you like what I'm saying, it might be different for you, but that's okay. It took a few months, honestly, of like everyday weed use, but I did feel some like faster effects. And with nicotine as well, it took like when I was vaping, it took probably a week before I was like a little steadier on my feet and before things started to happen, like, oh, I can taste food better. Excuse me, I'm sleeping through the night. I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. to hit my vape and then unable to sleep. Cigarettes, I want to say like the same, but it was, I don't know, Dr. Bonnie, I'm curious about your research. Cigarettes were easier to quit than the vaping, maybe because I was able to use vaping all the time. And because I don't know, I'm curious about that, or if that's other people's experiences as well.
It's a great question. I have a few thoughts on that. I mean, most people would say that quitting nicotine in any form, smoked or vaped, is harder than cannabis, cocaine, any other drug. But what you may have been going through, G, is also has to do with where and how you're using it. Like you're saying, it's not just the product, it's how often you're using it and where you're using it. So if you're saying that you were able to vape and you were able to vape in different areas, more in the car, more secretively, more at home, people who are using the nicotine pouches can use it more regularly, then it's going to be harder to quit because you're able to use it on a regular basis. One of the things I think it's important to note, a couple of quick ideas here. One is because of the brain development and the way our brains work, things that we see cue us in to wanting to do that behavior more. So people who are vaping a lot and maybe they're going out with friends and their friends are vaping, or they're hanging out at a party and people are pulling out a vape, whether it's nicotine or cannabis, your brain actually cues into, I want that. Ooh, that looks good. It's why people who are trying to quit smoking cigarettes, for example, in the old days, more when you could smoke in bars, didn't want to go to bars because they associated smoking and drinking together. So we get cued in, and that may have been what was happening to you, is that you were struggling not just with the brain and the withdrawal and all that, but the cues and the wants and what around me is using. And the truth is that your age group, and many people who are listening to this are at the age, I would imagine, where more people are vaping or edibles or other things than are smoking cigarettes. And so the cues are going to be more so for those vaping products. The other thing, and you said this, G, it took a long time. And one of the things that's really important to realize is that very few people completely quit cold turkey and do so overnight. In fact, the average is, I don't know, I can't remember the exact number, 2 to 11 times for cigarettes, and it's about that same amount of time, right, for e-cigarettes and for probably for cannabis as well, and especially if you're using both together and you cue each other in. So one of the messages I have to everybody listening is, don't beat yourself up. Don't feel bad if you don't quit on your first attempt. That's okay. You're trying. You've gotten, maybe the first time it's a couple of days and then it's a week and then it's a few weeks. I mean, obviously, I want you to quit as much as you can and you're all motivated to do so. That's great. But if it doesn't happen on your first try, keep going. Try again. You quit for some amount of time, pat yourself on the back and keep going. And then, gee, your cold turkey, we recently published a study about cold turkey in young people. A lot of young people go cold turkey. It's hard. It's hard to do that. And I think setting a quit date is really important. I know that the X program and the Truth Initiative program suggest that. My program suggests that as well, that you set a quit date, know when it is. The cold turkey often means that you're not getting any medication to help you. That's okay. A lot of people don't need the patch or other things to help them. But one of the things I say is, and it goes with the cues that I was talking about, it's not enough to think about your physical milieu, what your physical changes are going to be. Having snacks, healthy snacks, having lots of water next to you, having, throwing out your devices, all that is fantastic. But don't forget that your social withdrawal is also happening, right? You can't go into that party that you always went to because your friends are going to be vaping and you don't want to vape again. Or you can't go to that Saturday night event because people might have a bunch of joints or blunts or edibles or whatever it is, or they might be mixing. And so what people don't realize, and I would suggest you all give each other some support around this, is not just the physical withdrawal and changes, but the social withdrawal and changes that happen. And people forget about that. And we need to take care of ourselves in this process, not just our heart, lungs, and brain. Yeah, I love somebody said a support group. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really great point about the social piece. Gee, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna jump in. I think I just was like reflecting on. I did try to quit nicotine multiple times, and the cold turkey for cigarettes was it lasted about 2 weeks, right? And then I'm remembering because memory is so funny. Like I had this story of like cold turkey. I would continually ask my partner like one more cigarette, like can I just like I'm just gonna go buy one more pack, and like when I'm done with this pack, I'll be done forever. And then I would get this like intense shame of like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like there's something wrong with me. Like I'm never going to be able to quit. And then that shame would be like, so I should just like give it all up and like keep smoking. And once I realized that, I have a lot of friends who have quit and are trying to quit, like I was like, this has nothing to do with who I am as a person, my character. It's just really hard to quit these addictive substances, right? And I see people, talking in the chat about, just trying to like hit a friend's vape, like when you're hanging out with them. Like sometimes I still have that urge, and like I am not a perfect person, and it has nothing to do with being a perfect person. Sometimes, like I go to 12-step meetings. People tend to smoke and vape there, and I'll ask someone like, "Can I get a hit of your vape?" And then I feel kind of cruddy. Like I'm like, oh, that was not what I wanted it to be. It's not as good as I remember, or it's better than I remember, maybe. And then I get more increased cravings. And so if I can remember, like I try to tell myself before I go into those triggering situations, whether they're a social hangout, whether it's me going to the park and like drinking coffee where I used to smoke my morning cigarette, I try to have like a replacement behavior. Like I try to talk to a friend instead, let them know how I'm feeling. I try to, something that I did when I was quitting like cigarettes was like using a lot of straws, and just kind of like trying to slurp stuff or like candies. That worked for me just to like kind of distract myself until I could ride the urge out of like, I need a cigarette. And trying to have those replacement behaviors around places where I was always vaping or smoking. Um, it's still hard, but that was enough, especially at the beginning, to kind of like remind me that I had a goal of quitting and to make it a little bit easier.
I have one teen I talked to who, teen, but I think this is relevant to anybody who knew that his cravings lasted about 4 minutes. And so he made a playlist on his iPhone or whatever for 4 minutes of songs. And anytime he was feeling that, he popped in his ears and just, and I'm not saying it's easy. And and what you went through and others who were putting in the chat, all wonderful things. I'm not trying to be flippant of saying, oh, that's all you have to do. It's hard. But my point is figure out like the straws is a great idea. This guy used music. Think about also what gets you, what cues you in to use, like hanging out with your friends or maybe stress. So what is it that you could do not just to replace the behavior, but replace the need? You know what I'm saying? So it's also I'm stressed. I need something. Okay, let's get exercising. Let's get those straws. Let's go do something else that might be able to replace the behavior and that feeling that you're trying to solve, or medicate for is also important to think about.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, recognizing that the rest of my life was still going on while I was trying to quit was really important. Like, I wish I could like have like, been transported to a beach and like no stress, but I still had stress and I still had like work and social situations and family drama and like all this stuff. And so recognizing that, like, the HALT acronym, when I was hungry, angry, lonely, tired, my stress would go up and I would want a craving. When I was like struggling with schoolwork, I would want a cigarette because I told myself, like, you can only do these things when you're de-stressed from using. And I really had to focus on like making sure I was getting 3 meals a day, like making sure I had snacks, making sure I was sleeping enough. Sometimes I would get an intense craving and I would just try to take a nap. I wouldn't take a nap all hours of the day, but like it was something that like got me through that craving sometimes. And I think maybe I would have been like upset at myself, or someone else might have said that's not healthy. But I think like the baby steps are a really big part of it. And like, if I was like, I can't handle this, like I just want it so badly. Someone told me recently, or when I was trying to quit, like, don't try to finish the whole cigarette then. Don't take like 10 puffs, like smoke as much of the cigarette as you get the high and then put it out. Or like take one hit from a friend and then say like, I'm done. Maybe easier said than done for some people, but I would try to not be like a perfectionist about like, oh, you failed. Oh, you hit you hit the vape, and keep in mind like the broader goals of like, I still want to quit and I'm really working at it. And I don't have to be perfect about this because that shame will like keep me stuck in a cycle.
I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat that kind of go back to this piece about social support, about the people around us who can either really be helpful when quitting, and people who are maybe not so helpful when quitting. Um, Someone recently posted, the worst part is I'm in the NA program, the 12-step Narcotics Anonymous program, and it helps so much, but everyone vapes or smokes, so going to meetings that usually help me will inevitably trigger me to ask for a hit. It sucks because the meetings have kept me clean off the harder drugs. I would love to hear, from both G and Dr. Bonnie, how do you recommend going about quitting when other people in your life are continuing to use?
I don't know if there's any science on that, but I would say so going through your life trying to quit when other people are using, I certainly wouldn't blame or shame them or be upset with them. That's really important to know. That's very important to all the work that we do. Everyone's different. Everyone has different needs, and different reasons for using and quitting. But unfortunately, you may not be able to hang out with that person on a regular basis or as much, or in situations where then you would start using or continue to use. That's, I think, the harder part. And that goes back to what I was saying, that your social piece changes. So it's, and maybe you could try to do a pact together. Let's work together. Hey, you want to try to quit this with me? Do you want to work together on this? But if that's not going to happen, again, not blaming, not shaming, not saying, well, I quit, you didn't, or this is what I'm doing, you're not. That's not going to help either one of you. This is individual. Feel good about what you have accomplished. Feel good about what you're doing and that you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for others. You're not doing it for someone else. Um, but again, that social piece, you may have to have that sacrifice for a little bit, at least until you have quit and stayed quit for some period of time before you can go. And I'm not saying you can't be that person's friend at all, but maybe it's at a distance. It's more via social media for a little while, or your text, or you hang out with other friends, but not one-on-one, where they might pull out a device and say, hey, do you want to share with me? It's harder to say no on those circumstances. As you get further along, and gee, please challenge me if I'm wrong on this, but as you get a little bit further along, I can't tell you if it's a week or 6 months or a year. It'll be easier for you to say no to that person. No, I'm okay, thanks, because you've been more solidified in your quit journey. But at first, that's going to be really hard.
Yeah, I just want to say to the person who wrote that, I completely relate. It's so challenging. And I go to 12-step meetings where, there's kind of like people are like, oh, look for the cloud and you'll find your people. But I have had to share it in meetings. I have had to talk to people who go to the meetings and let them know I'm quitting smoking and that I don't want to be offered things. And I have brought nicotine gum, which helped me. It has, sometimes it's like can make me a little nauseous. So I would have to be careful of that and use the right dosage. And that was something that was offered by my doctor and that people in the X program talked about. I would pop in like a gum once before the end of the meeting or before the beginning of the meeting so that there would be some nicotine in my system before I got the craving that was like way more intense. And then I just think also like trying to be really compassionate with myself about like, gosh, like I really wish that there were no consequences to me hitting someone's vape or like smoking a cigarette. But I know for me, like there are, and just being really like kind to myself of like, I'm stressed about this. I'm angry about this. Like maybe pulling a friend aside and being like, can we go get like a slushie from 7-Eleven right now? Or like, can you sit on this bench with me and like chat for 5 minutes? Like I'm really stressed. Just kind of trying to use any and all skills I had and remind myself this is just really hard and like I'm doing something that's really hard and I'm trying my best. But I'm right there with you. And honestly, 5 years after quitting weed, like sometimes if I'm like out with friends for a night or I'm at an event and someone like sparks up or pulls out like a pen, I have to sometimes like really move away. So I can't smell it, I can't see it, because I know that that could still be a trigger and I just don't want to put myself in that situation. Um, so yeah, I just do that to like protect my sobriety, but it's still something that I really value. And it's gotten way easier over time to just be like, oh, hey, I'm going to like go look at the refreshments or like I have to go talk to that person or like I'm going to go take a phone call and just kind of give myself space. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And somebody put in the chat, I saw earlier things like breathing exercises, that sometimes helps with everybody. The box breathing, we have some of those activities on our Reach Lab website. Anything like that is really helpful. And whatever you could do, again, it's an individual journey on that. And then whatever you need to do to stay strong and put yourself, like you're saying, G, and I'm saying, not in this situation where you're going to feel like you're going to take a hit again. But then again, if you do, don't beat yourself up. Start again. Start again.
I love that. Shame can just really derail a quit. And I think it's so easy when, we're using whether it's nicotine or weed or other substances to get caught in this like shame spiral that just will throw you for a loop. Um, I saw a question in the chat about dealing with shame. G, I know you touched on that a little bit, but is that something that you'd want to talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, I think shame is a really intense feeling, a very overbearing and kind of like it can be like totally unground you or me in a second. And it sticks with me. And I just like, I think I've also seen some stuff about like, um, emotional regulation in general and like reward systems. And like, I, I think Dr. Bonnie, you also have some science to back this up perhaps, but like my sense of emotions and sense of like pleasure and reward were very different when I was using marijuana and nicotine every day. Like, pardon me, that instant gratification of like I don't feel the feeling I'm feeling anymore. Like, oh, I'm feeling shame, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling sadness, I'm going to get high, I'm going to go outside and smoke cigarettes. That was so hard to change, but it's possible. And it's really helped me in like a lot of other ways in my life. And that is something that if a friend is like, I'm trying to quit smoking, I would be like, if you prioritize like we talked about, breathing exercises, making sure you eat, meals and snacks, emotion regulation, which is like, it's harder said than done. But I just like, I was using these things because I had a really hard time feeling my feelings and like being present in the world. And I think that's like a truth that I feel really like vulnerable about, but it's true. Like I was smoking weed and I was using cigarettes to help me with something. And it helped until it didn't help, right? Until the consequences were too much. I wasn't sleeping, I was having trouble eating, I was so stressed and it wasn't even working anymore. So if people are quitting, like when I was quitting, those things kind of came up again, right? Like all those emotions and the shame and the feelings. That was, but it was temporary. Like I had to kind of go through a phase of like the quitting stress, like kind of like, being like on edge, like feeling like a raw live wire until my body learned to relax more. Okay, now I'm drinking tea in the morning instead of my cigarette. I am calling a friend instead of like my nightly blunt. Small things where my body was able to like kind of reprocess how it did pleasure and emotions.
And one of the things you're saying, G, is you're still having a habit. You're still having a ritual, but it's a healthier ritual for you. It's something that you're replacing it with that you're feeling good, like you're saying your tea, somebody put in the chat, reading, whatever it might be to help cope. And a lot of people today are stressed, and as we were saying a few minutes ago, and that's why they're using. So trying to replace that feeling with something else, I think is really important for people to know. And you're going to know what that is. The other thing is what's a goal? Set a goal for yourself. Maybe it's money that you're trying to save some money rather than we actually on our Reach Up website have a cost calculator. We say how much does it cost for the amount of vaping or cannabis use you're using. What can you do with the money? Maybe you're motivated by cost. Maybe you're motivated by drug testing, and we were talking about that today in my lab, being an athlete, and you really want to be a professional athlete or a college athlete and you're worried about drug testing. Maybe you're motivated by just the health and feeling better or not being dependent on something. Everybody's different. Try to figure out that strength, and that'll help you with the self-regulation as well, and with the motivation to be able to quit.
Yeah, and like I think we've really been touching on this. Those goals for me were so much easier to like remember when I had people around me, even if it was one person, two people, um, knowing that I like had this goal. And, you know, I talked to my pediatrician. I'm an adult. My doctor, when I was trying to quit, because I had like a surgery I needed to quit for, like in the future, I was curious if I could be smoking when I was recovering. And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, there's something in my future that I want to quit for. I had bronchitis and I was trying to smoke cigarettes through bronchitis, and the pain was horrible, but I still wanted to smoke. And then I realized, like, there are things that I might value more than cigarette smoking. Get back on track about the social thing. There were groups that my doctor recommended, right? Of like through my doctor's office, 12-step programs. If you have even just friends who are like, I am thinking of quitting, you guys could like make a group chat, or if you also, this was really helpful for me, knowing people who would quit and like asking them questions, which is what we're doing right now. But like in my life, just being like, oh, like what's one tip you would give someone like who is trying to quit? That like communal advice and like the advice that a lot of people have was really helpful for me to not feel so alone. because sometimes I felt like I was the only person who was like feeling the pain and like the shame and the discomfort of like, I need to quit and I need to quit now. But so many people have done it and have stayed with their goals. And that gave me hope, which I think I needed a lot of times, especially when I was like emotionally really stressed about this whole process. And the X program has like uh, blog posts and like chats and like people just really care about this, and they really care about trying to help other people quit and achieve their goals. And like that's something that I try to remember, you know.
Mm.
Thanks, G. Um, I really appreciate you sharing this. I mean, I know this is super, super personal stuff. Um, I want to shift a little bit. I've been seeing a lot of questions about medication to for both quitting nicotine and questions about are there medications uh, to quit weed. Um, so, Dr. Bonnie, what can you tell us about medications to quit nicotine and weed?
Sure. And I want to preface it by I'm not a treating physician. I'm a research psychologist. So it's not from my experience, but more from the science and what we mentor people to do. So there are, I mean, the most effective, particularly for adults, a little less with younger people, and adults, I mean 18 and up, are things like somebody said Chantix, bupropion, I can never pronounce that, works well. The patch, put a patch on, that tends to work pretty well with people. It's important to know that a lot of these medications are not available for anybody under 18 unless you get a doctor's prescription. So you could still get it, and this is important. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has authorized or approved these products for anybody who's 18 and over to go over the counter and get yourself at a pharmacy. But you could still ask a doc, hey, I'm really struggling, would you give it? The problem sometimes is it depends on how much nicotine you're using. So if you're using a pod or a vape a day, it could be more than a pack of cigarettes, right? Some of the vaping products are a couple of packs of cigarettes, if not more, per day. And so a patch is 21 milligrams of nicotine, which is just about a pack a day. So sometimes people need more support. So you might need a patch and some nicotine gum or toothpick, somebody put in the chat, or some other medication to help you. But I would also say medication alone, just like therapy alone, is not always going to work. For some people who are really, truly addicted, you might need both cognitive behavioral therapy, some other form of therapy or support along with the medication. But I wouldn't be afraid to use the medication if it's going to help. And a lot of the adolescent medicine docs I talk to or the psychiatrists really rely and know that that's going to be important. If you're talking about for cannabis, when I've talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine who does a lot of work, that he said that they struggle a lot with knowing how to really help people manage cannabis. And I haven't seen a lot of science of anything that's super effective, but I could be wrong. And please, others chime in if there's been something. It's been more behavioral, maybe sometimes something to help you with the withdrawal, but we just don't have a lot of studies. And part of it is because cannabis is still a Schedule One drug, so there's not a lot of studies. We can't do randomized control trials through NIH funding and things like that. So that could be a little bit more challenging.
Thanks. And I want to make it clear that there are kind of two different ways that you can classify the different drugs for quitting nicotine. There's some that are over the counter, and those are nicotine replacement therapy. So they give you a smaller and more controlled dose of nicotine, and those include the nicotine gum, the patch, the lozenge. Um, it does not include Zyn or other nicotine pouches. Those are not approved by the FDA to help people quit. And in my work on X program, I hear from a lot of people who think about switching to Zyn or have tried switching to Zyn and end up really addicted to Zyn or to the other nicotine pouches. Um, so Zyn is not a nicotine replacement therapy like the gum, the patch, or the lozenges. And then there's also prescription medications. So medications that, regardless of your age, you can only get via prescription from a doctor. And those include Wellbutrin or Zyban and Chantix.
And sorry, hopefully I didn't say pouches. I said patches. I'm
No,
hoping.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're good.
Sometimes the tongue goes crazy. Yes. And I totally agree. If you're smoking cigarettes, conventional cigarettes, e-cigarettes are not an approved or even a recommended way to help you quit. I know some adults in some of the adult literature, some people have had some success quitting cigarettes with electronic cigarettes, vapes, but on a population level, as used, it is not effective. Same thing with pouches, really pouches for the most part, are not effective either. Patches and the other things that you just described, absolutely. The age thing, it's not just the prescription versus not, it's also age, unfortunately, that 18 or under 18 versus 18 and over. But again, don't be afraid to ask a physician, a healthcare provider, somebody to help you with getting these medications.
Yeah. I wanted to mention the pouches because that's a big question that a lot of people have. Is like, are these helpful for quitting vaping or quitting cigarettes? And the answer is like, doesn't look like it. So I
It
want to make it
doesn't.
really clear. G, I know that you used
Yeah.
medication while you were trying to quit. What was your experience with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the gum. There are like specific directions on how to use the gum that I got from my doctor. And then I just was able to get the gum at like pharmacies, at like my local grocery store. There's like a 2 milligram and a 4 milligram. There might be other ones. And then based on like when you start, basically how much you're smoking, you use one or the other. And it definitely helped with cravings a lot. It gave me like a little bit of nausea if I like did it on an empty stomach sometimes. The taste, just like it's kind of like gross minty. I didn't love the taste. But to get over a craving hump, especially in the beginning, I had tried quitting vaping cold turkey and I turned into, so I saw someone in the comments say it. I was mean to my partner, who I live with. I was grumpy, I was grouchy, I was like so irritable. I can't even express like how much I didn't recognize myself in the quitting process there. And so when I was trying to quit cigarettes, I was like, I'm going to use nicotine gum. And I also this is just my personal experience. I have other mental health stuff that I am not ashamed of, but I knew I needed to be on top of taking like medications that I have for other things in my life, for instance, anxiety and depression. And when I quit marijuana, actually, I was in a place where I was able to talk to a doctor about, weeks out from quitting. I was trying to do all these things, like, and they were helping therapeutic things, right? Taking my dog on long walks at night, talking to family and friends, doing more board games or coloring books, like really just things that like kind of helped me soothe and like relax. But I was still having a lot of like distressing like mental health symptoms. And so I talked to my doctor and I was able to get some help with medication. So that's not a medication that's specific for quitting nicotine or marijuana, but it is something that really supported my quitting journey with marijuana. That's, again, I'm not a doctor. This is just my personal experience, but I needed some support in the realm of like getting back to a baseline. And I'm really grateful that my doctor was like able to listen to me and had experience with other people quitting and was able to help me find a solution. Also, I just kind of like have some tips and tricks I was curious like if I could kind of throw out there. I don't know when a good time is for that.
I think now would be great. We're coming
Yeah.
about 15 minutes left. If you want to rapid fire, give all of your best tips, like let's do it.
Yeah, and like these are tips and tricks that I got for uh both weed and marijuana. I mean, weed and nicotine. But maybe like just want to. Sorry, I'm getting a little sleepy. Asking people their tips was really helpful for me. And I tried some that worked and I tried some that didn't work for me. And it was just kind of like getting this rotation of like, I can try different things that aren't going back to weed or nicotine. And then I found some things that worked, especially like the things you like to do. Like, if you are really into like, like fidgets or stuff like that, like, okay, I have like a special lotion in my bag. It smells like peppermint. Every time I'm getting like stressed, a craving, someone at work is bothering me, like I'm just kind of gonna like rub my hands together, like put this lotion on. Someone mentioned taking a break, like outside of work, a breathing break in the comments. I thought that was great. Like saying, oh, I have to take a phone call. I'm not taking a phone call. I'm just kind of breathing, getting myself out of a situation that's stressful and giving me a craving. Spending time with animals in nature was really big for me, even if it's just 5 minutes, like trying to notice things around me to kind of ground me. Okay, I'm going to notice everything green around me. I'm going to notice everything pink around me, like kind of some grounding tools. I even was Googling just like grounding exercises. So smells are really big for me. I would keep essential oils as well as a lotion and just kind of like dab a little bit on my hand, and try to like sniff it and just like remind myself I was okay. Cold water on my wrists when I was getting like really kind of like, this is a good one for like parties or social situations where there's like a lot of people. Going into the bathroom and putting like cold water on my wrists, kind of letting myself like feel it on my hands and like calm myself down. Straws. I heard people say gum. Sometimes toothpicks work for people. I did try those vapes that like don't have any nicotine in them. They weren't super effective for me. Maybe they're more effective for other people. But they just kind of were expensive and they broke, unfortunately. And like tracking which one of these things really worked for me and repeating them, no matter if I was embarrassed or a friend made a comment being like, this is what I need right now. Maybe it's, having like a special necklace that you can fidget or like your watch that you can fidget with. Just something that's like really grounding was helpful for me. And maybe people, yeah, in the chat are like sharing stuff as well, drinking tea, practicing mindfulness. Yeah. And also something that really helped was having, when I was able, I looked on psychology.com to look for like people who were therapists who were like knew about addiction. And even if you don't like want to do therapy, knowing that there are people out there who like specialize in this is like a real thing that people like study about and take really seriously, made me feel better. And then I was able to reach out to some and make sure that I had some support that way. And it was really helpful for me. Just wanted to like put that out there. Psychology.com is a great place to like vet people going through a doctor, especially with all that like emotion stuff that can come up when quitting.
Thanks, G. Dr. Bonnie, is there anything that really stood out to you from what G said that really mirrors your experience?
Yes, yes, yes. Ditto, 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 all of the above. I think your comments and what people are putting in the chat is absolutely correct. It's sometimes some medication, it's sometimes something physical, like as simple as somebody was saying tea or gum, things like that. It's the psychological aspects as well, and all the things that were just mentioned, and it's getting some support, whoever that might be. And you're going to be grumpy. You're going to be mean for a while. And that's okay. And have people around you, you could say, I'm gonna be uncomfortable to be around, but please stick with me in this journey and let's do this together. I'm gonna have cravings. I might need hold your hand. I might need to step outside for a little bit. Really, really holding on to the not feeling ashamed of anything and knowing that you're doing something great. It's not your fault this happened. If anything, I tend to blame the industry. They are the ones who didn't tell you how much nicotine, some people, I mentioned it, some people are putting this in the chat, how much nicotine is in these products, how much THC is in these products. Not your fault. You weren't starting to become addicted. You were starting for whatever reason that journey was for you. So not blaming yourself. So get help. And that's okay to reach out. So, and you're probably going to need a combination of all the things that we just talked about. So do that. It's okay. And think about a few of these things ahead of time. You're never going to know which is going to be the best, but if you can have, like we said, some of those snacks, some of those breathing exercises, change your room, change your milieu, go somewhere different so you're not going to those same places to cue you in. Have those in your mind ahead of time. Maybe write them down. I've got a notebook of things I'm going to check off so that way I could try a few of these things. Here are the physical. Here's the help with the cravings. Here's the help where I'm not so mean to people. Here's some breathing, whatever it might be. So when you're feeling it, we don't think as well when we're in that stage of duress. So really thinking through, all right, let me write these ahead of time, get a friend to do so, write some of these things down. And then when I'm going through it, I can go and read which of these is going to be most helpful for me today.
Yeah, I would even say if people are still thinking about quitting, like trying out some of these tools before the day you decide to quit could be really helpful. So you kind of have them in like your memory bank and like your body knows like, okay, I'm stressed. Like I am going to try to like run my hands under some cold water or like call a friend. And then, when you're quitting, it's like more of a instinct. But that first day is really hard. And I'm thinking especially for nicotine and definitely for weed. I think exactly what you said, Dr. Bonnie, like support system, there's no reason to try to do this alone or like with your like knuckles clenched, like there are tools, there are skills. And I just like am so grateful that people are here and are listening. And I've been reading the chat. I know we have, and I just want to say like, it's really cool that you're here and that you're like doing this thing for yourself of like, hopefully getting something out of this and getting connected to X program. It's like really kind to yourself now and to yourself in the future. And I just want to like, kind of give it up to everyone. I'm really glad you're here and doing this. And I'm really grateful that we got to be here today also.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Dr. Bonnie. Thank you so much, G. I know there were a lot of questions in the chat and in the Q&A that we didn't get to. I strongly encourage you to join the conversation online at the X community. It's a similar vibe. It's a lot of people who are helping each other through withdrawal, through quitting, through bumps in the road. This webinar is going to be posted on the X community as well. If you have signed up for the X, or if you've signed up for X program, you're able to post your own questions. You're able to comment on others. If you haven't signed up for X program yet, I think there's a lot to get out of it. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of answers to a lot of these questions. And there's connections to resources. So you can get started signing up for X program by getting out your phone and texting 8 to 88709, the word X program, one word, or by going to xprogram.com and getting started online. Thank you so much, Dr. Bonnie. Thank you so much, G. Again, thank you so much to everyone on this webinar. Stay strong. I'm just so happy to be a part of this and to be a part of your quitting journeys. Yeah, stay close to X program. Hope to see you in the X community soon. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care, everyone. You got this.